Let's see. Hey, Travis.
Hey, there she is.
Hey,
How are you, Bianca?
good. Let me see if I can turn this up a little bit. Okay. Look like how many can you see people on your end in the comments?
Yeah. So, yep. I mean, I think I can only see the ones who are commenting on me, unless can you see Mel Camo Girl 82? Can you see her?
No. See, that's what I'm trying to
Okay.
figure out. So, but that's good. I mean, so if people are commenting on your end, you can let me know. And that's because we were trying
Sure.
to set this up so people will be able to ask questions and interact. Whoever's on my live can do that and whatever. Same thing. So if I see something, I'll let you
Yeah,
know
for
as well
sure.
about a question. But
Yeah, I'll do
well,
the same thing. If
yeah,
somebody asks a question, I'll jump right in.
okay. But welcome, thank
It's nice to
you.
be talking to you, sort of face to face.
I know. We had a good conversation the other day. I thought this is like a
We did.
continuation of it. Um, but in some ways, like as far as for my crew is kind of coming on, it probably takes a few minutes. I had a couple of people
Yeah,
sign
that's
up,
fine.
but you know, you've been seeing my post a little bit lately too. And as far as what we're going to talk about today, like I think, you know, I'm interested in getting your view on how emotional health and what you're talking about in reviving masculinity, right? Like I think it's
Mhm.
part of the process. But
Oh,
again,
definitely.
right? We were talking about the responsibility factor and all sorts of things. So that's something that I'm really interested in talking with you about. So
Yeah. I mean, if I can jump right into it if you want. Yeah, the whole idea. I mean, my both my books are self-help books, and if
hmm
if you're not open to that, if you're not trying to improve yourself and get better, it's not like you can just start acting differently. I mean, I lay out all these 18 different things that I recommend that you try to be as a man. But I mean, you got to be willing to look in the mirror first and say, all right, I don't like what I see. I want to make some changes here. It's
hmm
not all bad, but it's certainly not all good. I got to chuck some things. And I think that is, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're the expert, but I feel like that's the root of emotional health to be able to say, okay, there's some things here I want to change and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I agree. I think that when we can get to that place to finally recognize that it is in our power to do and it is our responsibility, to take hold of whatever emotional development that we didn't get. We spend so
Hmm.
long trapped in the paradigm of the conditioning we come from, whether that's social, which you talk a lot about in the beginning of your book, or it's the family trauma that is like an umbrella over our own growth, right? So until I think in some ways it's like that's safety, but it's still
Oh, for sure.
blocking the sunshine.
Yeah, we talked about that the definition of normal and how powerful that is, and you're developing normal until you're into your teens at least, and you know even if that's super dysfunctional, your yearning for normal will put you in a bad position more comfortably than fixing yourself. So it just takes a long time to get to where you're to the point where you can start to step outside of that.
Yeah, it can, and I just think I touched a button called like match, and I have no idea what I did.
Yeah, I went ahead and said yes, whatever it was.
Okay, I'm gonna leave the match. So I don't know though if anyone wants to double tap the screen and like it. To be honest, I haven't done a live in a little bit, so it looks like things have changed here. And for anybody that's on my live right now, I have Travis Neville and I are talking about men's emotional health, his book, Reviving Masculinity, and other programs and other things he's got going on. But at the same time, it's really more about a conversation that needs to start happening on a very regular basis because, like you're saying, it is not something that's. I think we're talking about it in some ways, but there's not a lot of action and follow through when it comes to, I think, the well-rounded understanding of it. And maybe you can,
Isn't that the case?
yeah. And I want, do you see men heading in a direction? I mean, I see a lot of this kind of like motivational, doing the kind of the motivational level of things. Maybe I don't know. I wonder where you find guys really doing most of their work.
Well, I mean that word motivation, I think, is a tricky one. I think that motivation, just by nature, is incredibly short term. I think
Hmm.
that there are lots of guys out there who can get information out and get somebody pumped up for about 20 minutes. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Or until their car ride's over. They're all fired up about something, and then they go right back into that definition of normal that we were talking about. Now, I don't want to make that the definer of the guys. I think that if you are, I would tell you, most of the people who are reading my stuff and watching my work and my colleagues, um, these guys are improving their lives. I mean, I
Yeah.
work with a guy called Ryan Morrow. He runs a website called carnalmarriage.com, and he's helping men specifically uh, to make their marriages better.
Yeah.
And he's got testimonials like crazy. These guys are just putting in place some things that to you and I, Bianca, are probably seem pretty common sense, but it's crazy how uncommon that is, right? So, um,
Hmm.
just because you and I understand this so well and we can, we get it, we can put this information out there, that doesn't mean that everybody else is going to understand it either. You know what I mean? But yeah, men are making changes. Men are
Yeah.
realizing that, hey, maybe I didn't get the things I needed from male role models when I was young. So I want to make myself better. And I mean, it's every age range. I would tell you, I get more results from the guys who are 30 to 40.
Yeah.
They're the ones who have some things in place and they're like, okay, so I'm secure here, but here's this area where I need to work, so I'll do it. Whereas the young guys think if they need any work, then there's something massively wrong with them and they don't want to do it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's
Really.
just a generalization, but
Yeah. But I had a comment, kind of just off of that. It was like, a man probably in his 40s or 50s reflecting back on, what if I knew this information when I was younger? I wonder what
yeah.
my life would be like. And I think that that's really why I'm so passionate about this, is because that changes the trajectory of society in many ways. It's when we stay in the same pattern that we can't, it feels like it's too oppressive to make, systemic change. Well, yeah, maybe smaller groups at a time, like we're seeing, but really it is about younger men and women making choices as well that are not in alignment with old patterns, old ways of doing things that are really outdated at this point.
Yeah, I think that it's easy to get intimidated by that process. It really is, but it's not necessarily so. I mean, the most successful people who work on themselves make small changes. I always compare it to the Titanic. I mean, how far back in the route do you have to change like 1 degree to where you miss that iceberg? You know what I mean?
Right.
Little tiny changes if you make them early enough. And I would tell you that that's really the key. If you want to be better at anything in your life, it isn't making these big, broad, sweeping changes.
Yeah.
It's making small ones that you maintain. You got to maintain them. Those are the ones who are successful.
Yeah, I have a podcast to Emotional Warrior Radio. You have a podcast as well. And I had, and I don't have anybody that signed up for this is kind of, yes, there it is I didn't have anybody sign up for it recently, but it's all an application process like Esther Perel's. So I do sessions with people. I don't say their name. It's all confidential, but they do disclose what's going on. And I think it's a little bit more instructional, but it's deep process. And I had somebody on the first 4 sessions that was just so articulate. I was like blessed with how well she was able to talk about her experience, but her overcoming codependency or overcoming some of these tendencies that she was, raised with, had to survive through with that as a coping skill. Like it was really phenomenal to see. Exactly, it's one thing at a
So
time.
what does she do?
Well, I
Yeah,
was
I
going
want
to
to hear
ask
about
you,
that.
your guys too, is that she first, it was like really coming out of isolation in that shell, Really, it was like, I know that I'm in a relationship where I've trapped myself in taking care of this person, and he's out of control of himself in some ways. And so she was enabling a lot of this. So she took one step. I'm going to schedule a class that I'm going to go to and make friends doing something I enjoy. And that one
Mhm.
thing led to, okay, well, then those people that I met there, they want to go out one evening. So she started to develop a life
Sure.
outside of the relationship, one step at a time. And it was
It's always helpful. You always have to have that, right?
right. But people they stay in this place. And I'm like, no, it's almost like, I
Mhm.
think it's quite behavioral when we talk about people that that are very repressed, as far as, am I allowed to have my emotions? Am I allowed to have something that I want? Can I go out and get it without having to be a
Yeah.
rebel, or without having to, it being destructive, right?
Yeah, you don't want to make waves. Nobody wants to be a burden for anyone.
Right. And so, yeah. And I was wondering too, the guys that you're talking about that are making changes, are they saying like what the first step, or one step, or two steps that they take that really starts to make the most?
Yeah,
Because
well,
it's like momentum, right?
oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, you gotta build a snowball here before it's rolling down the hill, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's small things. It's small things for men, and the great part about it is most of the things that make you better at being a man, you're also going to get reaction from your partner or from women, right? So having a little bit less aptitude's the wrong word, tendency to be affected by your partner's emotions.
Hmm.
So she comes home, she's had a bad day, whatever it is. Maybe you listen exactly the same way as you always did, but you just don't let it get you down too. And as
Yeah.
long and if you can keep your strength there, if you can stay that rock, do exactly the same things you always do, just don't let it bring you down too. Just that one little thing, and consistently do that over a few weeks.
Hmm.
What you'll find is that obviously you're going to feel better.
Yeah.
And second, I mean, I don't want to generalize for all women, but most women are looking for that rock. They're looking for somebody that is not going to falter when they are faltering. They're
Hmm.
looking for someone to lean on, and so you got to have that strength. So those little things. I mean, maybe it's easier to say than it is to do, but if you can, like a little change like that can make a big difference.
But that's,
Physical changes.
but
Go ahead.
yeah, but that's two different things that I think that are really important. It's detachment and staying in the driver's seat of your own,
Yeah.
emotional vehicle. You're
Hmm.
having a boundary,
Well said.
right? So you're
Sure.
not,
Yeah.
right. So, and that is really helpful to a woman who I think does have, I mean, obviously through hormones and have raising children,
A lot of
men
factors.
and women have
Yeah.
a different emotional experiences, though they have, I think, the exact same capacity to understand emotional experience. I think they experience
I
emotion
agree.
differently, right? So the man, that
Mhm.
really is helpful. And I actually just did a post right now before this about how either hiding, running away, or shutting down, a woman picks up on, like, we're picking up on behaviors big time and what that
Yep.
means. And that makes
And
you,
you're reacting.
that's conflict avoidance, or, jumping into a conversation with statements instead of listening and asking questions, or being the rock
Yep.
and letting yourself be calm while that person has space. This is, this is actually what the parent was supposed to do. What we were supposed to have learned that we didn't learn was they were supposed to
Yeah, it's
hold,
crazy how rare that is.
right, how we were supposed to hold, they were supposed to hold space for our experience, and then be able to be mature enough to, like, okay, but that's not going to destroy me. I'm strong, and I'm here with you. But that didn't happen. And a lot of times
Yeah.
that's where we learn to be in our relationships.
I love that phrase that you use, hold space. I'm
Yeah.
really digging into that and trying to figure out exactly why I love it so much. I know that it
Mhm.
applies extremely well, but yeah, I want to spend more time learning about that. But great
Yeah.
idea. I love that concept. Yeah, I agree that the parent thing. I mean, it's so common, especially kids now. I mean, the kids that I would have, I think you knew this. I used to be a high school teacher,
Yeah.
so I would be dealing with these kids, and that's we're talking about from 2000 to 2012, right in there,
Right.
and that's when you're starting to get the helicopter parents, and always both parents working if you even have two parents, and
Hmm.
it wasn't like it was where you and I were growing up, where you had two parents and one of them was probably home, and the other ones were, like it's just different dynamics. But I think that the parents, I don't know, they go crazy trying to give their kids the things that they didn't have, and they forget to give them the things that they did. Like,
Right.
oh, cool, you get to go to Disney World, and I didn't. But my mom was home all the time. Like she was always there when I got home from school, and there was always that presence there, and she was calm, and she was very. There
Yes.
you go.
I think that we get caught up, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, because I think I'm really into social psychology, love it. And I think that this is where, again, where we've kind of come off base and always made an excuse, where it's like, the non-existence of hard times since the Great Depression, so to speak, though there have been difficulties, has
It
has
screwed
taken us.
everybody. It screwed everybody.
Yeah, and I want to know. I mean, if you could give us a little bit of a synopsis of what you're thinking there, as far as men are concerned, and masculinity, and how their identification has changed due to all of this, because there's a real.
Yeah. So a man's. We've got this concept. I'm sure everybody's going to agree with. A man is there to protect and provide.
Mhm.
Um, and a guy one of my colleagues adds the word preside, which I like as well. But um, anyway, yeah, let's just go back to World War II, and you've got a generation of people who had to fight, literally go fight to be, um,
Mhm.
and that was the thing that was expected of them. You weren't a man if you didn't go fight, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
oh, he didn't fight in World War II. What's wrong with that guy? Is he scared or something?
Mhm.
Um, and they come home and it's a great time. The 50s were awesome economically, right? And so now their kids become hippies. They have, the hard times of the 40s, the 30s and the 40s
Right.
created very strong men. And then those strong men created very good times. And those good times were the 50s and 60s.
Mhm.
And the kids who grew up then became weak because it's struggle that makes you better. I mean, I can't make it any simpler than
Mhm.
working out. If you want to get stronger, you've got to fight through pushing some weight. You know what I mean? You have
Mhm.
to struggle to get strong. And it's not just your muscles, it's everything about you, and specifically your attitude. Um, yeah, and then so you got the hippies and they're out there protesting everything, and it's very similar to what we have going on the last couple of years. We got protests everywhere, and I mean that's people biting the hand that literally feeds them. You live in the finest society that's ever been in the history of humankind,
Mhm.
and you got a problem with it? You know what I mean? Like that's what it is. The easier the times are, the weaker you become, and then what happens is you start to manufacture adversity because we as humans are built for that.
Uh-huh.
Especially men,
Interesting.
we need things to solve. We need problems to fix. We need mountains to climb, things to conquer. And when those aren't there, we will create them. And good men, I create the adversity by I'm going to build something, or I'm going to work out, or I'm going to challenge myself in this way, or run a marathon, or whatever.
Mhm.
And the weaker ones
Ah.
make problems where there aren't any. You know what I mean? And those are when you're married, you've got a great woman who has decided she wants to give her whole life to you,
Mhm.
literally. I'll give you my whole life. And then you have an issue with it. It's not as good. So now you got these guys who think, oh, I'm here to provide and protect. Well, nobody needs protecting in this environment, in this society. And it's not hard to provide for somebody because you go down to Kroger and get anything you want anytime. It's not like you have to go kill an animal for people to feed. So, men are like, I'm here to protect and provide, but there really isn't much of that to do. So you lose your little bit of your self definition, right?
Right.
And really, woman, as far as today, they're looking for the protect and provide comes more in a more as symbolism, right? So
Right.
protect me by being that rock when I'm having an emotional thing. I don't want to go too far. You let me know where my limits are there, maybe. And providing is, hey, we all live in this house. Help me with the dishes, let's do some cleaning. I mean, that's kind of a modern version of providing, and it's just the way that our society is right now. And unfortunately for lots of men, that's a there's a crossroads there. Like I'm not scratching that itch of my genetic needs for combat or adversity,
Hmm.
so I don't feel like I'm really doing anything. And yeah, there's definitely a pinch there. I saw you jump in and I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. I was thinking like, I mean, that's really interesting that we manufacture adversity. And I too am really ambitious. I feel like I manufacture, some amount of like, what do I have to work on next, in order to
Yeah.
keep myself going. And people also, I think that that's an interesting point, um, that I want to dig into more as well. But you know, the struggle makes us stronger. And this is where I guess I find in my work the most, this is kind of, and I notice when I'm working now, now that men are really listening to what, I'm saying on TikTok, or identifying it, or feel with it,
Yeah.
or feeling seen. But still, the
Hmm.
next line that comes is, I don't want to struggle emotionally. The emotion, what I call it, emotional labor. So
Okay.
emotional labor is, the work of verbalization, of changing a behavior, of trying something new, in order to get different results. And for some reason, that's not the
That
same
sounds
as
like it.
going out and like, fighting or having a purpose that's much more physical and, they're apt to do.
Yeah.
So I think I see a little bit more into that, as far as, you know, maybe they don't feel it's their forte. I mean, I'm like, I know you can do it. We've got this, but
Well, it is. Well, here's the thing. I mean, you know this. I mean, you're talking about socialization. I mean,
Mhm.
where in a man's upbringing was he taught how to handle his emotions the right way? We get taught to tuck them away and push them down. And, the only emotions that are acceptable for a man are real happy and real angry. That's
Yeah.
about it. So you take all these bad things and they just come out as anger when underneath there's disappointment or sadness or embarrassment or all these other negative emotions. And the only thing you know how to express is anger. So there's that part of it. So yeah, men don't, of course they don't want to do that. They've never, like, it's never been encouraged in them, I would say. And I'm not
Hmm.
excusing anyone of blame,
Oh no, right.
not at all.
It
But
hasn't
the
been.
second part is, as as you said, all those physical things, they're not out there. They're not there to be done. And worse than that, men aren't capable of doing them anyway. I mean, we're fatter, lazier, weaker, less intelligent than we've ever been. I mean, men. I did a study. I quoted a study on grip strength in my book where
Yeah.
basically a man's grip strength today is the same as a single mom's was 30 years ago. And grip strength, it predicts
Yeah.
everything about you. It's anything you do with your hands. So, um,
Interesting.
yeah, I mean, men will say, well, I would rather kill dragons, but bro, you're soft. You couldn't do that either. So you might as
Hmm.
well help somehow. Do the dishes, wash your car, help out. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the way it should be going. But as you and I agree, it's not.
Yeah, but I mean, I know this is just kind of a free association here, and I had somebody mention it, and everybody, if you double tap the screen, you can like it, or wherever they make likes happen now. I don't seem to be able to make that happen. Not only, but Happy says not only
Like
family
I'm sending
influence.
likes.
Yes, not only family influence, but friend influence is huge as well. Absolutely. I think peers, to that point, our peers, especially during adolescence, really start to show us if we want to belong, we have to act this way. And I mean, that's where even I think we pick up some pretty serious, it just feels good, but obviously drinking, binge drinking in college, all the drug use, all of this stuff just
Sure.
blows our brains out. I mean, really, I've seen people come out with brain damage now at this point. It's not like just smoking some pot. Now you smoke something that is hallucinogenic called pot,
Yeah.
right? So there's something real going on as far as we're not mentally strong anymore. We are
No
slowly
doubt
but surely
about it.
weakening. And I would,
Yeah, and I would tell you
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and priming us for the metaverse. I'm just wondering, like I'm just like, where is all this going? Are they just seeing the direction that we're going would be prime for, putting the chip in? I don't know. But I mean, really, when there's
We already
nothing
did
here,
that, right?
right? When there's nothing here to fight for, I
Yep.
guess. So yeah, that was just,
Yeah, so I agree with you. The mental weakness thing, it's I was talking about this before we connected here that if I always wanted kids to fail in my classroom when I was teaching because
yeah,
man, I'd celebrate that because man, here's the thing, cool, you fucked up. You can now I can help you through it. I can help you get better at whatever that was. You're going to learn from it because we all remember our failures. It's very poignant in your mind, right? So that's a
hmm
great place to learn. And second, you're going to come out of it going, hey, man, that really sucked, but I'm still here. I'm okay. I'm alive. And you know what? I'm actually a little bit better because I screwed up. I want to see that process happen a lot more. And sadly, schools in particular, which by extension, I would tell you that it's parents, don't ever want their kids to fail. And
yeah,
it's the best thing in the world. That's how you develop mental toughness, like you're talking about. And it isn't encouraged anywhere. Everyone, I don't want to just beat a dead horse here, but it's just that the self-esteem movement. Everybody gets a trophy. We can't ever hurt anybody's feelings. Well, you know what? We should be hurting some feelings. We should. I mean, that's how you find your way. You were talking about the peer pressure thing. It's the most powerful thing in the world for a teenage kid. It's
yeah,
more powerful than anything else. In fact, you can't override it. You can't override it. So as a football coach, I just make it work for me. Like I find a way to make peer pressure go the way I need it to go because it's going to be there. It's
yeah,
incredibly powerful, and it's not. And I think education is set up to ignore it, and that's not
yeah.
appropriate. It doesn't work.
And I think that this is one of these things, and I'm not sure if you wrote about it, but I really feel like, as far as history says, and I say even tribal, agrarian type of communities, or something where there's more of initiation, a brotherhood, a coming to a passage
It's a
for a
big
young
one.
man into being a
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
And now it's like, oh, everybody just go to school, compete, you feel like nothing. And then you go get stuck in a nuclear family in four walls. I mean, how detached can you take a man from, I think, or a boy even, and never give him any legitimacy? Like, I think that's why I think football, I think sports, I think having coaches, and yes, and is so important. I mean, if you can, but that's, they need that more. So I see, did you write about that? Like the brotherhood has disappeared in some ways, or it's really only military or something like that.
So I did a podcast episode that I called Rite of Passage, and it's I spent time talking about the history of that term and how Native Americans did it and how some sub-Saharan African tribes do it and
Yeah.
how it's kind of gone away. And the stink of that situation is that boyhood never gets crushed. You should at some point cast aside your boyish ways. I mean, I think it's a biblical quote, right? But
hmm
in order to become a man, you have to, in a sense, delete part of your boyhood. And when that doesn't happen, you just continue to act like a boy. You become your Peter Pan, right? You never grow up, and you're living in mom's basement when you're 30. You're a failure to launch kid, and that's incredibly, incredibly common now. And
Right.
I'm sure you're seeing it as well. Yes, it's absolutely important. Actually, the way that I recommended that be done, because like I said, I think at a governmental level it's too big and it would invariably be so watered down it wouldn't work.
Right.
Um, I think it needs to happen on a family level. I think you need
Right.
to, like for me, I've got a brother and I have a brother-in-law,
hmm
and we have two nephews among the circle of us. And it would be a situation where the three of us at our level in our 40s go, all right, at what age are we going to let, these young boys know that they're not to act like boys anymore? Here are the things that we expect of you, and those expectations are not the same of
Right.
what we expected as a kid. I think it needs to happen on a family level. And I think, some families like here in Michigan, deer hunting is a big deal, right? So uh, that's a sort of rite of passage, but it's more of like a tradition, right? It doesn't change who you are. It just it's a cool thing where now you get to go hang out with the older guys, which is incredibly important. You need to that presence of older males
Yes.
is hugely important. Boys learn how to be men socially. They don't. It just doesn't come from within them. I think that women have an advantage there.
Mhm.
girls become women, hormonally, right? It happens from within you. You're going to want to hold that baby. As your hormones change, you change. You start thinking differently. And boys, not really, not so much. You got to see men doing it right,
Mhm.
and you know, there's not much of it. And I wish there were.
Right. And we have somebody kind of, I want to just read a few comments because I think they're in alignment with what we're talking about. It's like,
Well,
you know, regardless of the political movement, the feminists, the far left, or any of this is that trying to turn, and I think it's an interesting trying to turn our boys into girls and girls into boys. And I wanted to make a note on that is that how women haven't become they have the term called toxic femininity, which doesn't actually
mhm.
apply. It would be like female traits like sweet kindness, nurturing, some sort of feminine
Yeah.
nice trait being
Things that are
used.
specifically feminine being seen as toxic, and that's not what it means when
Yeah,
people say that. I agree with you. Yep.
yeah, that's right. And so but actually I think that they're more, like the masculine, they're more a toxic masculinity, if we want to use the word. It's like you're just taking up
Yep.
the position, like some sort of opposite position. But it does seem like you even had a quote from Jordan Peterson about how history is being taught to us in a way that says you've been oppressed, rise up, you've been
Mhm.
hurt, rise up, and again, there's just a way that
Yeah.
it's being taught that doesn't help us work together to survive this lifetime. I mean, or do something different with.
You need us both. You got to men and women should need to be working together. That's the whole damn point. That's what I'm trying to get done, right? And that's what I know. That's what you're trying to get done. I want to say hi to number 54. He just joined. I used to
Yeah.
play basketball with in high school. What's
Oh,
up, Jamie?
nice.
But yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree. Keep going.
They need to. They absolutely need. We need to work together, and that
Mhm.
division, and then making us. And again, and I when I studied sociology, to be honest, I felt feminism was taught in a way where you know, women wanted to be considered equals. But this is in college, I think I studied. So maybe I was already working with a more modern view. It didn't seem like really like, oh, I want to put down a man. It's just that women really were writing from a perspective of legitimizing why they'd have
Equality.
equal rights. And
Yeah.
so that made sense to me.
Yep.
But then the feminists got pretty pissed off with the trans movement because they're like, wait a second, this is totally obliterating what it is that we've, set as far as a premise of equality. So now we're really like reeling when the group think takes over. I mean, and again,
Yeah.
like you said, where do you stand? And this is where women, again, I guess, maybe have an idea about where they stand with these things, but I think this is really destabilizing for all of us.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah.
Right,
When you try to disparage one group or the other, you're hurting yourself. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. So,
right.
the whole idea of I don't know. I agree with you. Feminism was awesome until probably the early 90s. And I think at that point, that's when it started to become it's a zero sum game, right? So now,
Mhm.
and I don't think I'm seeing this in my life, like in the people around me, but in universities and things like that, it's more about pushing you down to bring myself up. And what you don't realize is bringing up your partner brings you up. you know, that's
Right.
that's how shit is supposed to go. I mean, be the biggest champion in the world for women if you're a man. Why would you not? The better they are, the better you're going to be.
Right.
And women, I wish women most women do think that way, but there are certainly some influential feminists who don't. I mean, and that's sad because they're
Yeah.
bringing themselves down as they do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's counterintuitive.
It is. And I think one of the things that one of the things that we have to do though to bring each other up at the same time, especially since so much has changed, where I think that there was a more of an understanding of what a man needed you to do to support him in some ways before too, because his role was defined and he was present for that role.
Yep.
And I keep on wanting to ask
Yep.
you about the single father situation because I mean, meaning that what your understanding of why that phenomenon occurred. But again, I find that there's something about the way that now we need men to really describe how to support you. Like, it's not to fix, it's not to make you, perfect for me. It's not, there's we do need men to start to say something about what they're looking for in a relationship.
Yep.
Right. And
Yeah,
what,
I would tell you that that's step one. I mean, one of the chapters in my book is called Honest, and I spend significant time talking about how if you don't communicate what your needs are, how in the hell can you expect her to meet them? And,
right,
men don't want to make waves. I think lots of people do. I can't tell you that's just men, but you don't
right,
want to make waves. You don't want to be a burden on your partner for sure. You don't want to cause problems. You want to maintain the peace, all this stuff, but it'll end up popping out somewhere else, right? So, all right, so I'm not getting as much sex as I want. And I'm just gonna, all right, I can handle it. I'm tough. I don't want to make problems. I don't want to make waves. I don't want to be an idiot about it. And then the next day you blow up about where she left her shoes in the hallway. It wasn't about the shoes at all. It was
right.
about the sex. So the sex is
Yeah.
it's an uncomfortable conversation,
Yeah.
but you have to learn some tools about how to handle it. And the things that I recommend are just don't be emotional, guy. Hey, here's the thing,
Hmm.
wife, girlfriend.
Hmm.
Um, I feel let down. I feel like unvalued because ultimately I know that if we're having sex, then at the end of the day, you approve of me. You
Hmm.
appreciate me.
Right.
I'm good in your eyes, and I need to know that from you. And
Right.
and that's what sex is to me. And most men don't understand that connection, let alone how to say it. But you have to. You've got to figure that out. You've got to be able to say this. These are my needs. Here's what I need from you. And you don't do it with the expectation of it being met. You do it because you got to get it out of you. If you don't, then
Right.
like I said, it's going to come out. Now you just look like an asshole. And good luck getting laid
Yeah.
when she thinks that about you. So yeah,
Interesting.
that communication piece is key. You got to be honest about it.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that it's so interesting. I was doing a program for young adults that I didn't finish, but Maslow's pyramid was part of it, and sex is there,
Oh, love
right on the
Maslow. Yeah,
very
yeah,
bottom,
it's on the bottom.
with
It's on the
with
bottom. Yep,
water,
yeah,
right? So
yep,
we're
yep. And
animals
sleep.
that way,
Right.
but we're
Yeah,
also emotionally attached that way. So
yep,
that's something
yep.
I think that absolutely I find in these relationships is like, where is it? And it's always messed up. It's always somewhere in a really weird, it's being used to project their issues onto. It's a game, and I think that's
You mean
that.
sex specifically?
Yeah, yeah, sex, like the sex life and like in couples therapy, I noticed that it's being
Yeah,
used to, not talk
it's
about.
as a weapon.
Right. Absolutely. And
Yeah,
so this is such a, I mean, this is a part of what a woman and man, a woman needs intimacy a certain way. A man needs touch a certain way. There is something about that again, like, where
it's a
in
need.
American like literature are we? I do think we're a little repressed compared to, European, we're more about.
Well, shit. The whole country was started by Puritans. You know what I mean? What'd you
Also,
expect?
yeah, right. True, true. That's very true. I mean, and I think we can make sense of this stuff that way because in some ways, I think
Yeah,
that's my bottom line too. Is we really need to question the belief systems that we're being so subservient to. When they're really not serving us anymore, we need to kind of go back to the drawing board. I think that's really tough mentally to
yeah. And I would
break
tell
that
you
feeling.
that a big piece of that. eh, Curious what you think based on your practice. It's focusing on the whole instead of focusing on yourself. Those belief systems, it's your belief systems that really matter, and the belief systems of your partner and your family and whatever it may be. It isn't what looks good on Facebook. It isn't what looks good on TikTok. It isn't what everybody else thinks your belief system should be. It's not the belief system of the world. It's yours that
Mhm.
matters. So number one, figure that out. Figure out what that belief system is.
Right.
And second, be true to it. Communicate about it. Adjust to it. Make it work. Make it. Hey, this is how I think things should go. I was counseling a guy yesterday who he and his wife used to be swingers, and at some point they stopped doing that. I'm unclear about that still, but
Hmm.
um, red flags all over. But
Yeah,
he's
right.
like, she
Lots of
she cheats
emotional.
she cheats on me every now and then,
Yeah.
and I don't know what to do about it. I don't want to be. We have kids and all this stuff, and I'd love to be able to just browbeat him and say, well, dude, what did you think you were buying? Right.
Hmm.
But, ultimately I told him, man, you've got to decide, hey, your belief system now sounds like has changed, and
Right.
that's okay. So she's either got to probably adjust to that, or you got to make some other decision. But regardless, you can't ignore it. You can't not be honest about it. You have to be able to say, hey, I need you to be honest with me about what you're doing, and I'm going to be honest with you and tell you, I don't want that lifestyle anymore. I don't want to do that
Hmm.
stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Are we going to do this or aren't we? Yeah, that's an extreme situation, but
It
I agree with
is.
you.
It is, but it is, that's a good, I mean, when you allow for something, again, I worked with somebody too that kind of like, they were together since early childhood, decided to get married, and then she wanted to have an open relationship. And so he said, okay. But his open relationships weren't working, and hers, and they all got into therapy. I'm like, yeah, okay, this doesn't work. So, I mean, in some ways, I guess if you're really both been married for a long time, maybe it works for some groups of people, but it
I've
really,
never seen it work long
yeah,
term.
I know, not long term, but if you're coerced into this in any way or kind of like go along, it doesn't
Extreme.
matter if it's swinging
Yeah.
or if it's some other value. Like values, like I have a value to protect children a certain way. Okay, but I'm okay
Hmm.
with you neglecting that aspect. Actually, and I go ahead and suppress my issue with the way that that's happening. What I mean, whatever. It might not be even that big of a deal. Even things on that level, I have a value. I have a way I live, and I'm in a relationship. It's those, even those smaller things need to show up. Otherwise, they turn into arguments. So, I mean, I think
I
that's
agree.
why every step of the way, you really got to know who you are as a person, because even if you think you can, oh, I can somehow accommodate whatever they're going to do, it's not true. That's, you're going to have a problem with it at some point. How is it going to come out in a destructive way, maybe?
Yeah, it's stomping on your fundamental values, and I
Hmm.
wonder, you know, I this is what I encourage in the guys that I talk to is figuring out what that is. But again, what are those values, and what are the things that are most important to you? And I wonder if that's entirely possible to sort of find yourself
Hmm.
or to heal yourself or to really work on yourself when you're with someone else. I've never really done that, and I've never really seen anyone be awfully successful. I've seen people work on their relationship, make their relationship great, but I don't often see people make themselves great unless it's at the expense of the relationship. Have you ever seen that before, where a person's really working on themselves as its own unit and the relationship keeps going as it was? I feel like there's a conflict of interest there.
They, I do. I think that this is the thing, is that if I hear like someone call me and say, hey, I want to work on some of these things in myself so I'm better for the relationship, I say, okay, so
That's one thing.
is that coming from her, or is that coming in, because I work with a lot of men. So if that's coming from her, then we need to work on why you're motivated to, is that a pleasing thing? Is she wanting me to fix you? Because then that, yeah, no way. Like that, there's a
Yeah, you got to figure out the motivation first. I
yeah,
agree. Got to get that motivation.
right. But if it is like, I know I'm coming from this place, and actually this is affecting my work relationships, I'm like, okay. But
That's
so
good.
my biggest thing is the higher success rate I found is if the woman is also in, or the partner is also in a therapy, or has done therapy, or is doing some sort of self development type of work, and is very willing to practice empathy with her partner in order to start to understand him. Because as I, start to work with him,
Yeah, that'll work.
talk more, things are, she's going
Hmm.
to get challenged. She's going to be challenged. She's going to be
Oh,
challenged.
no
It's more
doubt.
frustration to learn, right? So,
Yeah, and you're going to see those changes in your partner, and you're going to wonder, are they just getting ready to leave me? That those thoughts are going to go on. I agree. When they're both working together, now it's just another adventure that we're taking together. Hey, how'd your therapy go? How'd your talk go? What are you working on? Hey, I'm working on this. It becomes just another thing you're doing together separately, and that's okay.
yeah, and you can show up. I think you show up better for your children, for your partner, in a lot of different ways. You just start feeling more confident. Um, And I think, as somebody was saying too, it's really hard to change if expectations aren't discussed. Your partner will keep you where you are. And I
Oh,
I think
yeah,
that's a
it's
good
true.
point. Go ahead.
She's right.
Yeah, they
Yeah, I
will.
mean that's definitely true. That's that. Like I said, it's that. I don't know. It's the lobster syndrome, right? So when one lobster goes to start to crawl out of the boiling pot, the other one's pulling back down. And I don't think it's anybody ever does that on purpose to be a dick. I think it's just you're wrecking my version of normal here. Things are changing, and I'm not sure I like that. I watched it happen when I got into doing what I'm doing now. I lost a couple of friends who didn't really understand this and saw me trying to do this thing that was different than I had been. They knew me as a teacher in this certain thing, and now I'm moving in this other direction. And granted, those are friend relationships and not romantic relationships, but
Right.
I think that's incredibly common when one partner wants to start working out, for example, starts getting fit and making some changes. The other partner bakes a cake. You know what I mean? Like that's so
Like,
common. That's so common. You make me feel bad about myself, so I'm gonna make you not do that.
right. Oh, it's so nice of you. Thank you for the cake. You know that that's not what I'm doing right now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. But whether, it's conscious or not, sometimes, as well, what I find, and this is when it doesn't work. And there are many, many times, like you said, often if a man starts to wake up, start to really embody like who he is without all that stuff on top of him all the time, he will start to
Tough to do, but
recognize,
once you're there, it's great.
yeah, his value, his
Yeah.
and who he got with. Might be like the abusive mother that he had, might be like the abusive father. I mean, like, he will recognize now he's in deep water and need to get the heck out of there no matter what. So I do think that that's part of, yes, that a lot of the issues that we face. I mean, in this, I mean, it's not, my work isn't to make it work. It's really to get people aligned with who they are.
Yeah, that I mean, you can't go wrong when you do that. You're the value, the end, the positives are tremendous. I'm curious from your perspective because you said you do work with a lot of men.
Yeah.
What's the most common block that you come into play that you deal with? What's the thing that stops men most commonly from becoming that version of themselves that's the
Mhm.
truest? What's the thing that gets in their way most of the time?
I will say, a lot of times it's a pattern of internalizing emotion as far as like depression. So I've had men that really be like, they have a way. So as we start to mobilize feelings, put together pieces, all of a sudden they'll do something, but they have maybe a punisher on the other side or guilt on the other side or do something destructive. And so it's actually kind of a repetition compulsion. So it's a way of dealing with emotion, like situations that keeps putting it back on them. And I'm like, wow, did you see how you're doing this to yourself over and over again? And so the unconscious is there on that one. Um, but also the emotional labor. Like, lady, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. I love that phrase. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Those are but it is, and I don't know if that's the putting off. And somebody says pride gets in the way. I think, in the TikTok population, to be honest, I've been seeing one other aspect is like really guys saying no. We are seen as weak to it doing it your way or doing it in some sort
Okay. So,
of way that is
yeah.
more
So
open.
that's incredibly common,
Hmm.
and it's not wrong, but there's a detour. There's a way to adjust that, and it's what I said earlier. If I could just do one thing, and nobody ever remembered anything else from any of my work, it would be this. You're going to feel like being vulnerable is the same as being weak. Well, so you have to be vulnerable in a non-weak way. So you know,
Yeah,
yeah, if your father dies, you're going to break down and cry, and these things are going to happen, and that's reasonable and that's okay as a man. But when you're dealing with something at work, you probably shouldn't be uh, giving obvious displays of what are going to be misconstrued easily as weakness. You can just talk consciously, even flatly, emotion free, hey, I got this thing going on at work. I'm not sure what to do. What do you think? What do you think I
Mhm.
should do? Talking to your partner like that is very different than, I don't know what to do. I'm losing my mind. I got working so hard. Very different. You can get the same, information across. You're still sharing exactly what's going on,
Mhm.
and it's far less likely to be misconstrued by your partner as weakness. And as we talked about earlier, that can be a real trap. Brene Brown always talks about how, you're supposed to be weak. And you and I talked about this earlier, but,
Mhm.
um, showing that weakness, on a genetic gut level, most women are going to be repulsed by that, because they need that rock. They need you to be strong for them most of the time. And if things like work are going to tear you down so far that you're melting, well, that's probably not good. So maybe talk to one of your buddies if you're in that state of mind. You don't have to bring all of your shit to your partner.
Yeah.
You have to, you got to really about that, shit the right way. So yes, you have to share and be honest, like I said, and weakness can, yes, easily, or vulnerability can be misconstrued as weakness, and that's why it's up to you as a man to know how to do it the right way.
Right. And what you presented there was a way a man thinks, because I haven't, unless I've seen a man actually in a pretty, terrible situation, chaos, express himself
Sure.
in that way, right? But
Mhm.
not, but that's the thing. Men think that expressing emotion looks like how a woman expresses emotion. And I'm like, no,
Yeah, it's different.
right? Like you just
Yeah,
said, like it is a 1 degree shift. It's a perspective shift. There's a million ways to express it.
yeah,
And you can
yeah,
just, if you've maybe thought it through for 2 seconds, you might really be able to ask, for somebody to listen to where you're at. Also, and just, asking a
yeah.
person to listen and not fix you, I think is a nice thing too. It's like, I really, I want, I want to have just a moment here just to kind of talk this out. Do you mind listening? And that will make her feel important to you, by the way, even just to be the listener,
Yeah, oh, for sure.
you know?
Yeah, and that's men don't, and when you engage in that activity, I had dated a girl for a few years. She was awesome in lots of ways. And one of the things that she taught me was that
Mhm.
she sent me this comic, and I wish I could pull it up here, but it showed this girl. It was a cartoon, and her battery, there was a little battery next to her, and the battery was very low. And then the next scene was she's being held by this man, and you could see the battery going up. And the next scene, she's walking away from her battery's all the way full. And that's that, hey, I just need you to care about me, whether it's listening, um, just holding me, whatever it might be, just care about me, and that I rebuild myself. And I took that to mean that, you mean really just complaining about what you have going on in your life that makes you feel better? Like, how can that be? Because I've always thought, well, I don't work that way. And it's one of those, you know, epiphany moments where you realize, yeah,
Mhm.
there are some differences between men and women. And I learned to try it out sometimes. Hey, I'm feeling kind of confused about all these things I got going on. I'm very overwhelmed. Let me just talk it through with you. And I
Mhm.
felt lighter. I felt lighter. Tried that stuff and it worked. Matter of fact, another professional that I work with here online,
Uh-huh.
he called me the other day just to say, hey, man, I'm feeling overwhelmed as hell. I don't want to bring it to my wife.
Right.
Can you just talk to me for 20 minutes here? I'm like, hell yeah, dude, fire away. And he just went a million miles an hour with his hair on fire like he always does. And I
Mhm.
just guided him a little bit, and he left fine. He was fine. So
Yeah.
yes, there's absolute value in there, not just for women, but for men too. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think, and I kind of want to get to the point that I was making too, is that yes, you do not want to always depend on your partner, because there is something about that then I think, again, if they're your only go to, then it can start to feel like, oh, I'm worried. Did you take my advice on that, or you kind of come to me next week about the same thing? I mean, being a therapist
Yeah,
is kind of, you want somebody to, you
I
know
bet. Yeah, I
to
bet.
kind of take the ball and run, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
I think that men absolutely can try out all of these spaces, have their own way of expressing their emotions, still maintain, quite a bit of how they process, internally. I understand that. and I also think that they appreciate touch. Whether that is
Oh my
with
God,
a woman,
huge.
I know that she doesn't like to feel like a witch or a crazy person because,
Hmm.
once a month her hormones are out of control. She appreciates a hug just to feel loved and lovable because she in her mind isn't feeling lovable. She's feeling crazy. So I think a man too, you get in that space, and when the more in your head you are, the more you need physical touch to snap you
Bring
out
you
of.
out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, just simple things. We talked about this on the phone as well. The touch can be so important, and it doesn't have to be sex. I mean,
Right.
matter of fact, it's usually most powerful when it isn't. I mean,
Right.
when I come back, when I went to a real job and I'd come home and she just would come up and rub my shoulder, or give me a kiss on the cheek. I mean, that would completely shift me from work to home. You know what I mean? And that was a great gift. I mean, those little things for men for sure are huge. And, a lot of times we won't admit it because that's a man thing. We're not going to admit our needs. It's tough to do.
Yeah.
And you need to. 'Cause I say this all the time. When you help your woman
Hmm.
with her car, or, you move a fridge for her, whatever, some manly thing that you did, you feel great about it. You provided this thing that she can't provide. You showed your value. You showed your worth.
Hmm.
Women are good at emotions and stuff.
Right.
So let her try, give
Right.
her a shot at it. She's going to feel just as good helping you out. Why would you not give her that opportunity to feel as good as you felt helping her?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that reciprocity. I don't think that people realize that as much. Trust is there. It needs to be built in there. And that goes a
Yeah, that's good.
long, long way for a healthy relationship. When there's not that trust, then, and how do you build it? It doesn't just
Yeah,
happen, folks.
yep, and it's built over time. And it's sad. It's a house of cards, though. In a lot of cases, it's so easy to kill it, but
Right.
and a lot harder to build it, especially after that happens. I've counseled a few people through affairs, and it's man, they never get all the way back. At least not in my experience. Have you ever dealt with that?
Yeah, I have. And I think it's pretty, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, well, and then also, by the way, like gambling addictions and some sorts of other types
Well,
of
it's the same thing.
addictions.
Yeah,
Yeah, the same type of thing. And really,
breaches of
unfortunately,
trust.
I find is that in those situations, kind of as a side note, yeah, trust is broken. If when it's broken in the marriage, I have a really hard time getting the woman on board with his treatment. She really wants to stay out,
Really?
separate. Yeah, yeah. And like, you know,
Hmm.
I think there's just like a too much of a betrayal for her to feel.
Yeah, burnt. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so I haven't really found a necessarily like somebody's like, yeah, I really want to work on this with him. He's kind of on his own, and then
Well, you know what though? I think that's a I can see that happening, and I don't want to put words in the mouths of your people that you work with, but
yeah,
I think women are a little more covert, and men are a little more overt. So I
yeah,
think that what you're dealing with there is that she was helping, support, and helping, support, and helping, support, and trying her best, and she got down to it where she had to tell him flat out, "You got to fix this, or we're done."
yeah.
And she
That's it.
was mostly done when she said that. So she didn't have it in her anymore.
Yeah,
And I think that's a more common for women to do it that way. They're going to support until they just can't. And then they'll finally be overt. You have to change this or this is going to happen.
yeah.
I don't know. That's my guess on that situation.
It is, and I say when I get relationships in that kind of she's already tanked, and really
Yep.
then anything I kind of do to get him to try to help it, she really, I'm really not there anymore. Don't try to get me in there. Like so,
Yeah.
that's a very difficult. Yeah, because it's already gone too far. They've already like as far as the curve of a relationship, it's now actually in a different place, and people are having a very difficult time ending it because of whatever all the complexities, right? So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, but I think that this is the thing for men is like as far as emotional health is concerned, and for women too, there is still this idea of being in a relationship is where you need to be or you're going to be alone, right? And that's something that
Yeah.
I really think women and men need to start to learn about is who they are before they get into relationships, and not,
Because as we said, it's tough to figure it out after. Yeah, and nobody
right.
wants to do that. Nobody wants to spend the time on their own. But you're making your boat stronger, as Jordan Peterson says. You're going to making yourself so much better for that partner. You want to drag a bunch of crap to a good woman? No, you don't. You want to be the best you can be, and this is the only chance you're going to get to do it. So do it now.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I didn't know, I forgot that he said the ships. And that's what I say is like with relationships, like we have a ship. And what we want to do is we definitely want a strong one. If you're tanking, or you're having all these problems, we're never going to be able to go anywhere. So absolutely. And we're going to end now. I mean, I think as it's been an hour, we can wrap it
Yeah,
up.
we got now.
But
Sure.
I'm sure we could keep talking. I didn't get to talk to you about single
Easily.
single dads. Maybe we can do this again and talk a little bit more about,
Oh, I'd love to.
a
Yeah, there's
little
a ton
bit,
of research about single dads and how that works.
and give a little bit more insight, I think, into then more of the young man aspect of things and how to develop. Because we went in towards the more of the relationship stuff, and I think that would
Which is
be a
fine. That's fun too.
really good focus. Okay, so again.
Yeah. Hey, Bianca, thanks so much for having me on.
Yes, absolutely. And tell everybody while we're still together, like what your podcast,
Okay.
tell everybody what you do.
Sure. So I run the Travis Neville podcast. I think it's gonna be backwards for you there, but it's on it's everywhere. It's YouTube, Spotify, any of the audio podcast sites. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. I mean, any Spreaker, any place you want to go. iHeartRadio, it's there. The audio version that comes out about 2 weeks before the video version, which will be YouTube, Vimeo, and Rumble.
Nice.
That's what I do for the podcast. Podcast is just my excuse to do a bunch of research, read a bunch of cool books, talk to smart people like Bianca, but it's all to support my books. This is my most recent book. Just came out 2 weeks ago. It's called Reviving Masculinity. The whole idea there is to teach men what they're supposed to be doing. And I specifically say the line, it isn't us or them, as far as men and women.
Yeah.
It's us for them.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be the best man you can be for your woman, for your circle, for your kids, for your kingdom.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea. That's what I do.
Yeah, and it's an awesome book. I will say, I really love how it's
Thank you.
written. You're an English teacher too, so you're a good writer. This is not some crap like thing that you put out there. No, it's really well written. And
all credit goes to my editor. I have a great editor.
Yeah, well, it takes people like that. I mean, this is a really important endeavor. So I'm happy to talk to you more and promote this, because I really think it's important for us to, at this point, really start to initiate action and activate this movement. There's no more time.
For sure.
So thank you.
I agree. Yes, let's definitely get together again, and we'll do we'll talk about the single fathers and boys. That'll be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, Travis, thank you. I'll see you again. And everybody, thank you for joining us. Your awesome audience.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.
Have a great day.